We hear the term New World Order, liberal international order, deep state, and even the establishment more now than ever. What is the New World Order? Well, we will expose this geopolitical movement to form a one world government and how it will affect you on this edition of End of the Age. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Dave Robbins with Endtime Ministries. Thank you so much for joining me on this edition of End of the Age. We're going to be talking about the New World Order. What is that? Well, the New World Order is simply a synonymous term for the end-time world government. That's what we're going to be discussing today. Now, yesterday, the New York Times published an article called, the title of it was The New World Order That President Biden Will Inherit. Today's the electoral colleges are going to vote. They're going to put a potential President Biden in. Obviously, President Trump's fight is not over. That's ongoing, but this is what's happening today in the news. And this is a great topic for that today because a potential the president-elect, Joe Biden, is a globalist. He believes in a New World Order, a world government. So what is the New World Order? Well, or this liberal international order, or this deep state, or the establishment. You hear all these terms. What are they? Well, they're all connected. The New World Order is simply world government. However, it's not just any world government. It's the world government of the Antichrist. The world government is being formed right now, and it's prophesied about in your Bible. It's a 2,000-year-old prophecy. So let's talk about it. The term New World Order is written on the back of the U.S. dollar bill. Did you know that? It's in the ribbon under the pyramid with the all-seeing eye. You'll find it written in Latin inside that ribbon. It says, Novus Ordo Seclorum. The word novus means new. The word ordo is order, and the word seclorum means secular or world. So now we got to ask the question, well, why is that term on the back of our U.S. dollar bill, the New World Order? I mean, we signed the Declaration of Independence, right? Well, it's been there since 1935, and it was put there by U.S. President Franklin D. Roosevelt. Roosevelt was a dreamer, and he dreamed of building a one-world governmental system, and he wasn't alone, but he was the driving force behind the establishment of the United Nations, the seat of this world government in the earth today, which was established back at the end of World War II in 1945. Now, what's very interesting, of course, is this is no new idea. And we can even see it in the prophecies of the Bible. There have been many world empires throughout time. But let's talk about the one that's being formed right now. It's found in Revelation chapter 13, verse 1 through 2. The Bible, John was giving this prophecy, and he said, And I stood upon the sands of the sea, saw a beast rise up out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns. And upon his 10 horns were 10 crowns, and upon the heads were the name of blasphemy. And the beast which I saw was like a leopard. It had the feet as the feet of the bear, mouth as the mouth of a lion, and the dragon, or Satan, gave it its power, its seat, and its great authority. So here you have the 7-headed, 10-horned beast that always represents the end-time world governing body. Remember last week's lesson when I talked about the United States and other modern nations in the Bible? Well, Daniel wrote that book 650 years before John wrote the book of Revelation. The prophet Daniel was given a vision of 4 separate beasts that represented kingdoms or nations that would exist at the time of the second coming of Jesus Christ. The 4 separate beasts described in Daniel 7, verses 4 through 7, and the modern nations that they symbolize are a lion with eagle's wings, which would be Great Britain and the United States. So when you see this 7-headed, 10-horned beast, this is what you can picture in your mind. A lion with eagle's wings, Great Britain and the United States, a bear, Russia, a 4-headed leopard, Germany, and a 10-horned beast, which would symbolize the reborn Holy Roman Empire or the current European Union. Those are the nations or empires that will be involved in the world government in the end time. Now, in Revelation, John uses these same symbols of nations to describe the end time world government. In John's account, the 4 separate nations from Daniel 7 have federalized into one large global governing beast, the 7-headed, 10-horned beast. And the interpretation would be something like this. And I stood upon the sand of the sea, saw a beast rise up out of the sea having 7 heads and 10 horns. So the European Union. And it had 10 crowns. And upon his heads the name of blasphemy. And the beast which I saw was like unto a leopard. So it had the body of the leopard, the feet of the bear, Russia, the leopard's Germany, the feet of the bear, Russia. His mouth is the mouth of the lion, Great Britain. And the dragon, or Satan, gave him his power, seat, and great authority. We know the dragon is Satan from Revelation 12:9 and Revelation chapter 20. So this is Revelation 13, 1 through 2. This, folks, is a 2,000-year-old prophecy of the world governing system that is currently being established. Today, I said, was a good time to bring this up because after today, the president-elect, Joe Biden, is a globalist. Many of the people that he's choosing for his cabinet are globalist. And so you can see they're all involved in the deep state, the establishment, the liberal international order, the new world order, or world government. They believe in a world government. Now, the question we have to ask, because there's something that's missing from the Revelation 13:1 world governing beast, the eagle's wings. Where are the eagle's wings? Well, of course, the eagle's wings, symbolic of the United States in Daniel 7, they're not mentioned in that combo beast, Revelation 13. And that indicates that the United States will not be included in the world government of the end time. You say, well, hold on a minute, Dave. You just said Joe Biden was a globalist. And if he's president-elect, should he get inaugurated on January 20 and become the president of the United States for the next 4 years? How's that all playing into the prophecies of the Bible? Here's how it works. Well, yeah, so the thing is that the prophecies will all come to pass. There's different characters along the way, but regardless of how the situations look, those prophecies always come to pass every time. So it lets us know, regardless of if a President Trump wins a second term or if a Joe Biden takes on a term for 4 years, these prophecies are going to come to pass.
Major internet companies are silencing and censoring Christian voices online. These companies are trying to control what you see and hear. Almost 200 videos of ours have been marked as restricted online right now. That's why we launched End of the Age Plus, a platform where the truth won't be censored, a platform where we can preach the message of the gospel. When you subscribe to End of the Age Plus today for just $12.99 a month, you can watch all of our content in a secure, easy-to-view way from your favorite device. When you go to watch.endtime.com and subscribe, you'll get instant access to all of our teaching resources, including Revelation, the Unveiling of Jesus Christ, Understanding the End Time, End Time Magazine, and so much more. We will not censor our message to comply with what the world deems as politically correct. Go to watch.endtime.com right now or search End of the Age Plus in the App Store or Google Play.
We've seen Bible prophecy fulfilled like never before. From the halls of the United Nations to the Temple Mount in Jerusalem, End Time Ministries continues to reveal the Bible prophecy in the news headlines around the world every day. Whether it's through our broadcast or online at our Jerusalem Prophecy College, your gifts enable us to put vital materials in the hands of those who need it most. Because of you, we continue to replace fear with faith in the hearts of Christians around the world. We will continue to see prophecy come to pass at an even swifter pace. We need your support. Your donation of any amount enables us to continue to broadcast and be a voice in the ever-growing censored media. To become a partner or give a one-time gift, visit endtime.com or call 1-800-END-TIME right now. That's 800-363-8463. Go online now. Visit endtime.com.
So the eagle's wings, not mentioned in that world governing body in Revelation 13. So we're not part of the end time world government. The prophecy also indicates that world dominance will have shifted from the United States, which has been the driver behind the end time world government up to this point. Those powers are going to shift over to Europe because of the 10-horn beast. Remember, that's the dominant beast back in Daniel 7. So that lets us know the United States isn't going to be involved. Powers are going to shift over to Europe. And there are many news articles talking about this. Europe taking their place as the leader of the world. Can Europe save the New World Order? So in looking at this prophecy, it always left us with a few questions. Since we're presently the leader of the world government, or we were really up until President Trump came on board and was inaugurated, how would this power shift occur? Would the United States be wiped out in World War III? Don't really see that. Or will we be brought to our knees and become a non-factor on the world stage? Don't see the United States doing that. Or could we perhaps go into isolation? I mean, all these questions kind of rolled around in our mind for years. But there is a scripture that helps answer these questions. Jump back one chapter to Revelation chapter 12. And it's the only other place that eagle's wings are mentioned in the prophecies of the end time. Revelation 12:13 says the dragon. Who's the dragon? That's Satan. It's not China. That's Satan in Bible prophecy. Revelation 12:13 says that the dragon will persecute a woman with 12 stars around her head. The woman in that chapter is Israel, and the 12 stars symbolize the 12 tribes of Israel. According to Revelation 13, the dragon or Satan will use the Antichrist and his world governing system to do the persecuting. The Bible says he made war against the saints. And John also tells us that in the next verse that Israel will be protected during the Great Tribulation. This will be Israel proper, not the West Bank, but Israel proper on the western shore of the Mediterranean there on the western side, which will occur during the final 3.5 years, this Great Tribulation, immediately preceding the second coming of Jesus Christ. The Bible says in Revelation 12:14, and to the woman were given 2 wings of a great eagle, that she might fly into the wilderness, into her place. Where's Israel's place on earth? It's the promised land. That's her place, where she is nourished for a time, times, and half a time from the face of the serpent. So here we have a picture of Israel protecting the eagle. I'm sorry. That'd be nice, wouldn't it? The eagle protecting Israel. A clear understanding of Revelation 12 and 13 have allowed us to be absolutely sure of 2 things. And let me get this right. The United States will stand with Israel and protect Israel from the world government in the end time, and the United States will not be part of the world government, and therefore will not come under the reign of the Antichrist. Now, I know that's revolutionary teaching to a lot of people, especially when you talk about the mark of the beast and a lot of things that are going to happen in the end time, but this is prophecy. So we've got to keep teaching it like we always have, like God showed Irvin Baxter all these prophecies all these years. Well, nothing's changed. And so it's very important. And this is one thing that I want to tell you is that over all the 50-plus years that Irvin Baxter studied prophecy, he would follow things for a while. He kept teaching the prophecies, and the characters would change. This person would get elected, this person would go off the scene, then this one would get elected, they'd go off the scene. So the characters change along the way, but guess what? The prophecies always come to pass, just like the Bible said they would. So guess what's going to happen in the near future? You don't have to even question. The characters are going to change. It looks like we're going to go from a President Trump, should everything not play out, from a President Trump to a President Biden. Again, that could change, I know. But regardless of who the characters are and who gets elected, who doesn't, the prophecies always come to pass just like they always have. It's happened for decades to Irvin Baxter. And guess what? It's going to happen in the very near future for us as well. So what do? We always teach the prophecies just like the Bible says, regardless of who the characters are. Now, so now you have, what are we talking about here? New World Order, one world government. The combined beast of Revelation 13 represents the end-time government of the Antichrist. The United Nations is the only structure that is specifically designed to be a one-world governmental system on the planet today. I've been there many times. We frequently hear the words globalization, New World Order, liberal international order, or even the establishment and the deep state here are mixed up in all that. So, is globalization and a new world order, is that a good or a bad thing? Well, Revelation 13:2 tells us that the dragon gave this combo beast his power, seat, and great authority. So Revelation 12:9, that explains that the dragon is that old serpent, the devil, and Satan. And therefore, Satan will give this end-time world government its power, seat, and great authority. The one world government, the globalization process, removing the borders, creating this global state to answer to a world governing body, the new world order that's forming now, that is of the devil. You wonder why there's so much deception going on, this human-induced global warming, which leads to climate change and all these other different things. That's deceptive messages. Those are lies put out, propaganda by the United Nations. Satan is inspiring it. It's not a good thing at all. That's the world government the Antichrist will usurp authority over. Now, Revelation 13:3 says, and I saw one of his heads at one of this. So what are heads? Very important here. They're nations. Revelation 13:3 says, and I saw one of his heads that was wounded unto death. So according to verse 1, the beast has 7 heads. Verse 3 says, I saw one of his heads were wounded unto death, and his deadly wound was healed. And as a result of it being healed, all the world wondered after the beast. So what do the 7 heads represent? Very, very important question. They represent this perfect combination of the 4 beasts of Daniel 7 without the eagle. One head is the lion, Great Britain. Second is the bear, Russia. The 4 heads of the leopard, Germany. And the 1 head of the 10-horned beast. All those nations, Great Britain, Russia, Germany, and the revived Holy Roman Empire, which is presently known as the current European Union, will form the one world government, this end-time one world government of the Antichrist or the New World Order. When you hear that term, that's not the last great hope for mankind, believe me. That's world government. We don't want anything to do with that. But notice the end of Revelation chapter 13:3. It says, all the world wondered after the beast at this point. The entire world will wonder after this new world order, this one world government beast. And most people will believe that this to be the greatest thing that's ever happened. Hey, we've got a one world government. No more world war. All nations will just go to this world government, surrender their sovereignty, and they will control everything, and it's all going to be good. That's not a good thing. That's a very bad thing. So then Revelation 13:5 says, and there was given unto him a mouth speaking great things and blasphemies. The seven-headed, ten-horned beast is going to be given a mouth. And from other scriptures, we know this mouth will be the mouth of the Antichrist, the one world leader who will rule for a very short period of time just prior to the second coming of Jesus Christ in the Battle of Armageddon. Verse 5 says, and power was given unto him, unto this beast, and the mouth that spoke great things to continue 42 months. The reign of the Antichrist will be a 42-month period, 3.5 years. It's probably going to seem longer than that, but it's going to be a 3.5-year period. There are several places in the Bible that lets us know the Great Tribulation is going to be a 3.5-year period. There are no scriptures in the Bible, zero, that say the Great Tribulation is a 7-year period. There is a 7-year period prophesied in Scripture, but only the final 3.5 years of that is Great Tribulation. So then, 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, verse 3 through 4 says the Antichrist will be revealed when he stands on the Temple Mount claiming to be the ultimate authority. The Bible calls this the Abomination of Desolation. And Jesus Christ actually said in Matthew 24 that it is at the Abomination of Desolation that the reign of the Antichrist begins. That happens halfway through that final 7-year period, right? So it's a 3.5-year period. So the Abomination of Desolation occurs 42 months prior to the Battle of Armageddon and the second coming of Jesus Christ, which happens at the end of that final 7-year period. So all of these prophecies, all the way through, they align up perfectly. And this is one of the things that, this is the main lesson I'll be teaching, this giant timeline in my prophecy conferences coming up next year, starting January 9th. It's going to be one big giant timeline. It's going to be an awesome lesson. And then on Sunday mornings, I'll be showing everybody where we're at on that timeline using current events. So I'm putting that together now, and it's going to be really neat. I think you guys will really enjoy it at our prophecy conferences this year. Now, based on these verifications, we know the Antichrist will reign for a 3.5-year period. Prior to then, you know, a lot of people are saying that, hey, the mark of the beast is right now. It's just around the corner. Things happening in the news. This is mark of the beast. No. The mark of the beast cannot happen until the beast is revealed. Now, there are precursors. We're watching some different things that could be precursors leading to the mark of the beast. But the mark of the beast cannot be implemented right now because the beast isn't even on the scene yet. Okay? So we've got to make sure we got our prophecy teachings correct here before we start throwing things out in the news and on a YouTube video and everything else, okay? Because I've got people sending me videos like you can't even imagine right now. But we want to teach the truth. And that's what we're going to stick with all the way to the second coming when Jesus splits those clouds wide open and comes to gather us home to be with Him. So the Antichrist will reign for 3.5 years. And though it doesn't seem like a very long time, it's going to be a time of horrible tyranny, and it's going to seem longer than it is. And his reign's going to be short but terrible. I mean, let's just face it. It's going to be a world governing body. Jesus said in Matthew 24:21 that it would be a time of great tribulation such as never been before, a time of persecution. And this time of the Antichrist reign will be worse than Hitler's Holocaust and the Crusades of the Middle Ages in many parts of the world. But there's another clue. There will be a global language at that point. So if you look at it, notice the beast from Revelation 13 had seven heads, but it had the mouth of the lion. The number one obstruction to world government throughout history, all the way back to the Tower of Babel, was the language barrier. Remember, God changed all their languages, and that messed up their efforts towards a world government and a world religion? The language barrier. Well, the Babylonian people in the Old Testament, remember at the Tower of Babel, they wanted to build this one world government, build this big old giant tower, and it tower into the heavens. But God stopped them. What did He do? Confuse their languages. One of them started speaking in Chinese. One was in Spanish. The other one, somebody was in English, and they were like, somebody was in German. Nobody could understand each other. So guess what? They spread out. They didn't even, I can't understand you. We can't communicate. God created different languages and kept them from communicating, and it thwarted their intentions. God did not favor their efforts towards a world governing body. God did not like that. So you know that absolute power corrupts, but absolute power corrupts absolutely. We're talking about a world government here. When anyone other than the Prince of Peace, Jesus Christ, rules a world government, it's going to usher in a time of horrible tyranny. The Antichrist is going to be the most corrupt individual that has ever ruled this earth. There have been many world empires, but the Antichrist is going to be the most corrupt and deceptive individual. Now, this seven-headed, ten-horned beast, it's going to have the mouth of the lion, which represents the process of globalization and the New World Order. So, the New World Order includes the implementation of one language, the mouth of the lion. The global language of the New World Order is English. Pilots who flew on their international flights, they're required to speak English. Telephone operators who handle international phone calls, they have to speak English. When Kofi Annan, who was the Secretary General of the United Nations prior to Antonio Guterres, he said the world community has made the decision that English is the global language. English is the language of the internet as well. According to Medium.com, English is the international language of business, commerce, science, medicine, and many other key areas. Even in diplomacy, where French once ruled supreme, English is now dominant in most regions of the world. So God told us through these prophecies that the global language of the end time would be the mouth of the lion. The lion is England. The language is English. And this 2,000-year-old prophecy has been fulfilled already. And we're watching the ongoing fulfillment, the establishment of this world governing body right now. It's the New World Order, the liberal international order. And the establishment and the deep state in the United States is working right along with it.
Move Mountains with Irvin Baxter. This book by Irvin's grandson provides 30 days of devotion that will enhance your relationship with God and others. Authentic illustrations from early morning devotions at Endtime will help you find your purpose and eliminate fears. Commit to taking this 30-day journey and experience real life change. Get your book for only $14.99. Call 1-800-363-8463 or go to endtime.com/move.
Major internet companies are silencing and censoring Christian voices online. These companies are trying to control what you see and hear. Almost 200 videos of ours have been marked as restricted online right now. That's why we launched End of the Age Plus, a platform where the truth won't be censored, a platform where we can preach the message of the gospel. When you subscribe to End of the Age Plus today for just $12.99 a month, you can watch all of our content in a secure, easy-to-view way from your favorite device. When you go to watch.endtime.com and subscribe, you'll get instant access to all of our teaching resources, including Revelation, the Unveiling of Jesus Christ, Understanding the End Time, End Time Magazine, and so much more. We will not censor our message to comply with what the world deems as politically correct. Go to watch.endtime.com right now or search End of the Age Plus in the App Store or Google Play.
If your station only carries the first 30 minutes of End of the Age, go to endtime.com and click the watch button to continue today's broadcast. You can also finish up later by clicking the archive button.
So the United Nations is the only structure for one world government. What's the origin of the United Nations? Well, back in World War I, also called the Great War, it was the worst war the world's ever known. I mean, World War I resulted in just over 8 million casualties, and the world screamed, never again. I mean, it was from this idea to establish this structure for a global security. This is where it came from. The structure became the League of Nations. The League of Nations was formed in an attempt really to ensure another world war would never be fought. U.S. President Woodrow Wilson championed the idea, but the U.S. Congress hesitated at the idea of being part of a world government. That's what this is. They did not want to surrender the U.S. sovereignty, and so they voted against it. Well, because Wilson couldn't carry his own government into the League of Nations, it dismantled. I mean, no United States, right? So it fell apart. But 20 years later, World War II ended in 1945 with 52 million casualties. And the cry for world security became louder than ever. So at the end of World War II, Stalin, Churchill, and Roosevelt came together at Yalta in an effort to end all war. And it was during these meetings that the charter for the concept of a global governance structure called the United Nations was written. Now, this next point, very important. There was one key man responsible for the formation of the United Nations. His name was Alger Hiss. You can read all about him in great detail in, there's articles on the web. Make sure you get a reliable source, though. So Alger Hiss organized the American delegation, and he served as the acting Secretary General at the first UN meeting even. And he also served on the steering and executive committees, and he was charged with the responsibility of actually being the architect of the charter itself. And after he played such a dominant role in developing the charter of the UN, still the charter today, by the way, and in that founding conference, 3 years later, Alger Hiss was convicted in U.S. courts of lying to cover his activities as a communist spy. I mean, we're still having this kind of stuff today with Swalwell and the Chinese, right? I mean, it's a mess. Spies in the United States. Well, previous to this, Alger Hiss accompanied President Franklin Roosevelt to the Yalta Conference, where the carving up of Europe by the United States and Russia took place just after World War II, at the end of World War II. And at this time, Roosevelt was a dying man. And so consequently, his sidekick, Alger Hiss, carried the bulk of the negotiations for America. What Russia didn't gain on the battlefield, she won at the negotiating table, at the peace table, because she had her own agents, Alger Hiss, and was acting for Roosevelt with the negotiations. So she had her own agents on both sides of the table. And that explains why Russia received so many concessions at the peace table at the end of World War II. Controlled much of Eastern Europe even. So Alger Hiss designed the United Nations. The United Nations you know of today, he designed that to be a global union of socialist republics. I mean, look at the emblem of the Soviet Union. It's a globe with two sheaves of wheat around it. You've seen it. With the hammer and the sickle imposed, okay? The emblem of the United Nations is also a globe with two olive branches around it. And when the insignia of the United Nations was designed, obviously the hammer and sickle was left off because that would have been too obvious, right? Everybody would have said, hey, wait a minute, that's communist. That's communism. That's like Russia or something. However, Alger Hiss designed the structure of the United Nations to ultimately become a world socialistic government. Always remember that about the United Nations sitting right up here in New York. You say, well, here in New York, what do you mean? Because there are people here in the United States that are pro-world government, pro-socialism. Now, Alger Hiss was sent to prison, but the UN continued to be a structure for one world government system. Not one word of that original UN charter that Alger Hiss was the architect of, not one word's ever changed. The United Nations still functions from that world governing charter. Look at it. The United Nations from its inception has been socialistic. Antonio Guterres is a socialist. The current Secretary General of the United Nations, he's a socialist. So you don't ever have to wonder, really, what's the United Nations all about? It's world government. the World Health Organization, World Trade Organization, International Monetary Fund. What are all these designed to do? Govern the planet. And this is the end-time world government the Antichrist will eventually usurp authority over. So, in order to understand this, we have to look at the formation of the United Nations back in 1945. Everything didn't work out as planned. I mean, because the Soviet Union received much of Europe as the result of Yalta and as a result of Alger Hiss's actions, there was a lot of tension, okay? So for a while, it appeared as if Russia would end up ruling all of Europe and that communism would dominate Europe. To keep communism from dominating Europe, the United States of America led the Western powers into NATO, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. NATO was the military alliance to counter the Warsaw Pact, which was the communist bloc of Eastern Europe. So to keep that from communism from sweeping over into Europe, we developed NATO. Okay? So as a result, the United Nations was rendered largely ineffective due to the Cold War. The United States was given veto power, which we still have today, was given veto power at the formation of the United Nations. The members of Congress were unwilling to approve a world government structure unless the United States had absolute veto power, which we've used to protect Israel many times now. When the U.S. was given veto power, Great Britain, France, China, and the USSR demanded veto power as well. The five victor nations of World War II, all of these victor nations were given this veto power. And this is what President Obama abstained from vetoing a vote allowed the resolution pass to the resolution 2334 on Israel. We could have vetoed all that, but we didn't. So they formed these nations formed the Big Five, the five permanent members of the UN Security Council. And they could veto almost anything that this world governing structure decided to do. Well, so if you notice back at Revelation 13:3, John said, "And I saw one of the heads as it was wounded unto death, and his deadly wound was healed. And the world wondered after the beast." So this is not saying the beast or the Antichrist was killed or rose again. You got to remember what the heads represent. It says one of the seven heads of the beast was wounded unto death. The only way for us to know which head was wounded or what the deadly wound was is for us to know what the heads are. This is very important because there's a lot of people that teach that the Antichrist will be wounded and come back to death, and that's not what this is saying. You have to remember the heads of the beast from Daniel 7 were merged into one beast with seven heads in Revelation 13. The beast in Revelation 13 represents the world government. So there is one head of the lion, one head of the bear, four heads for the leopard, and one head for the ten-horned beast. Which of these heads or nations was the one that was wounded to death? That's what we have to ask. So after World War II, the Allies, Russia, Great Britain, and the United States of America determined something had to be wrong with Germany, because they were concerned with Germany's history of they repeatedly plunged the world into war. So to ensure that it would never happen again, they split Germany in half. They created East Germany, placing it under the Communist and Soviet Union sphere of influence, and then they had West Germany and placed it under the Allied sphere of influence. Well, by doing this, they created two separate German nations, and reducing Germany's population and financial muscle to the point it was no longer a threat to world peace. Well, at that time, news headlines screamed, "Germany is dead. She will never rise again." Well, that ended up being not true, okay? Because they are now rising again. But When the communist reality set into East Germany and into Eastern Europe, the Eastern Europe people wanted to get out from under the communist tyranny. And as a result, there was this huge hemorrhage of people fleeing to West Germany and into Western Europe. They just started pouring across. Well, what did that result in? Well, on August 14th, 1961, the Soviet Union built the Berlin Wall, this 29-mile wall that divided East Berlin from West Berlin, because nobody wanted to live under the communist side. Okay, so they were trying to get out. Well, they just went in and built a wall and said, no, you can't get out. They had checkpoint Charlies everywhere, and I mean barbed wire, and it was bad. They also established the Iron Curtain and placed lookout points throughout Europe, separating Eastern Europe from Western Europe. Well, now we have to talk about the healing of the deadly wound. So, in the March 29th, 1968 edition, now this is an awesome fulfillment of this Bible prophecy, okay? March 29th, 1968 edition of Life magazine published the headline, 3.5 Superpowers to Rule the World. The article was written by a man named George W. Ball, who at that time was the Deputy Secretary of State for the United States of America. In the article, Mr. Ball stated, in this time when there is enough nuclear weaponry to destroy all human, plant, animal life off of the earth 20 times over. I mean, you really only got to do it once, right? But I mean, there was a lot of nuclear weapons. He was discussing the divisions causing the tensions around the planet. And he said, somehow we've got to find a new global structure or a world government, that's what he's intimating, that will get rid of these terrible conflicts that threaten to blow up mankind. And he proposed in the article that 3.5 superpowers would rule the world. His 3 powers were the United States, the Soviet Union, Europe, or the European Union, and then Japan was the half power. And he said if these 4 powers would get together, they can ensure the borders where they are. Nobody would be moving borders. Nations wouldn't be fighting each other over borders. He said we would not tolerate any borders ever being moved. We would not let these little third-rate powers pull the 2 nuclear powers into a conflict and threaten to destroy the world. So what's he doing? He's saying we need some kind of a world governing power to help with this, so that way these things can't go to war and pull us back into where we've got maybe a Cold War situation, or worse than that, even a World War III. And so this was in the Life magazine.
Most of us walk around day by day blind to the prophecies being fulfilled right before us. Every news report brings a new piece to the puzzle in the race towards the final 7 years and the second coming of Jesus Christ. Now, more than ever, it is important for God's people to understand the times in which we are living. On November the 12th, 2013, we opened our Jerusalem Prophecy College in downtown Jerusalem. These same courses are now available online for people who are unable to attend the classes in person. We welcome students to join us and discover the link between current events and the prophecies of the Bible. Take your place in the prophecy of Daniel 11:33. Enroll in the Jerusalem Prophecy College today. Go to JerusalemProphecyCollege.com.
So, in this Life magazine, Mr. Ball statements, they align with Bible prophecy. And they actually said that that Ball continued discussing Germany and the division of Europe and the Iron Curtain, and in particular, the division of Germany and the Berlin Wall. And on page 89, he referred to the wound. He said, where the division that festers like a rusty knife wound must someday be healed. Well, you remember the prophecy back in Revelation 13. One of the heads must be healed, symbolizing the Third Reich. We're talking about after World War II here, Hitler's Third Reich. And so consider this. There is the First Reich, Second Reich, Hitler's famous Third Reich, and then the now Fourth Reich that's now rising. So we know beast in Bible prophecy represent nations or kings. That's from Daniel 7. Multiple heads on a beast represent the number of times a kingdom will rise and fall. So based on that information, if the third head was the one that was divided when Hitler's Third Reich was cut in half, when the deadly wound is healed, the whole world would wonder after the world government beast, right? That's what Revelation 13:3, it's what it says. So, I had to share this with you. This is back in 1968. My father-in-law, Irvin Baxter, it was this thought process going through this article and others that made Irvin Baxter realize the Berlin Wall was going to come down. Now, that was the symbol of the Cold War. He started telling his friends that, and his friends were like, Irvin, don't teach that. Nobody's ever going to, you're going to ruin your ministry. Nobody's going to have you preach anywhere. Don't teach that. This was the year I was born, 1968. So it was at that time, way back then, 52 years ago, Irvin Baxter started teaching the Berlin Wall would come down, and when that happened, that would be the catalyst that would launch us into the New World Order. So he continued teaching that from 1968 all the way to 1986. And there were people making fun of him and saying, Irvin, that's crazy. The Berlin Wall's never going to come down. However, he taught it all the way to 1986, and that's when he published his first book, A Message for the President. And he included all this information in the book. And no one believed the Berlin Wall would come down. Nobody. So he published it in 1986, but 3 years later, on November 9th, 1989, the Berlin Wall did in fact come down. And they come out of those meetings shortly after that talking about the New World Order. Well, the only way that Irvin Baxter knew all of this information was because of Bible prophecy. He put it in a book 3 years before it happened. And then when it happened, everybody started calling him, and really, that's the thing that really launched Endtime Ministries back in 1986. So it's really a pretty miraculous, awesome story. It all goes back to the prophecies of the Bible, everybody. Now, on the 25th anniversary celebration of the building of the Berlin Wall, in the August 14th, 1986 edition of USA Today, there was an article titled, The Berlin Wall, West is Somber, East is Festive. The Berlin Wall's 25th anniversary Wednesday spotlighted its unique role as the stark symbol of East-West differences, the bricks and mortar of propaganda, the 29-mile wound that won't heal. So, doesn't that strike you as a resemblance to the deadly wound that won't heal and the rusty knife wound that won't heal? Remember Revelation 13:3. And now the USA Today article is saying it's referring to the division of Germany and the Berlin Wall as this being a wound. Revelation 13:3 says one of the heads was wounded to death. Remember, the heads are nations. So the Life magazine article, remember March 29, 1968, this was George W. Ball. He said, each side can afford to give elbow room to the other outside Europe, where the division that festers like a rusty knife wound must someday be healed. A direct fulfillment of Bible prophecy, everybody. So the Berlin Wall came down November 9th, 1989. In the November 20, 1989 edition of Time magazine, there was an article entitled Wall of Shame, 1968 to 1989. And it actually stated that the most palpable evidence of a deep wound in European civilization, and it is finally gone. Now, I found many other articles since then that called the Berlin Wall a deep wound in the heart of Germany, especially Berlin. So, folks, 2,000 years ago, Revelation 13 called the division of the third head of the leopard the wound that just won't heal. It was a deadly wound, but the deadly wound was healed. Well, what happened when the deadly wound was healed? The New World Order was birthed. And it happened quickly. Mikhail Gorbachev, George H.W. Bush, Pope John Paul II, within 20 days of the fall of the Berlin Wall, they met together at Malta. And when they came out of those meetings, they announced the birth of the New World Order. What's the New World Order? What are we talking about? The New World Order is the end-time world government prophesied about 2,000 years ago in Revelation chapter 13. And it's the end-time world government that the Antichrist will usurp authority over. Now, you say, well, is this really happening? Well, yes, it is. In Time magazine back in 1992, Mr. Strobe Talbot stated in his article titled The Birth of a Global Nation, you can go online and read the article, that in the 21st century, national sovereignty, as we know it, would cease, and we would all answer to a single global authority. We would push away all of our borders, do away with our borders, create a global state, and we would all answer to a one world governing body. In his, years later, he had an interview with the Council on Foreign Relations, and he made this statement. He said, let me just say, they asked him a question. He said, well, let me just say a word of acknowledgement first to the Council on Foreign Relations, which is part of the establishment in the United States today. He said, it's great to be back here. I love this institution. It's been a terrific part of my education over the decades. He was a globalist. Okay? So he was then asked this question. The interviewer said, Mr. Talbot, how can people who believe as you do, and broadly put, those voices in the Democratic Party, those voices we associate more with the Democratic Party, talk about global governance without setting off alarm bells? That the one-worlders and the Council on Foreign Relations or the Trilateral Commission are all coming for them to get their guns and their Bibles and still turn it into a one-world government. What's the vocabulary? Now, this interview is talking to Strobe Talbot. What's the vocabulary of global governance that is politically and culturally most appealing? Mr. Strobe Talbot responded. He said, and I'm quoting, he said, global governance, in a sense that I think the phrase is properly used, is not a dream. He said it's a reality, and we've had it for a long time. In the modern age, i.e. now, we have global governance in lots of forms. Some of them are associated with the United Nations, others associated with the World Trade Organization, the World Health Organization. Now, this is Mr. Strobe Talbot telling us this, not hiding. He's saying, hey, this is what it is. He said there's regional governments. It's just a fact of life. So he continues on. He said, so I see global governance as nothing more or less than a way of collectively, as sovereign states, managing the fact and the ongoing process of globalization and the fact of interdependence. So he's saying, hey, this is not a dream. This is happening. We're in it. Mr. Strobe Talbot worked in the Clinton administration for 7 years. Bill Clinton, in the interview, he calls his former boss, Bill Clinton, a liberal internationalist, which is somebody who believes in a world government. So he was Bill Clinton's roommate when they were both Rhodes Scholars in London, England. And now he's the president, or I should say he was formerly the president of the Brookings Institute. I don't think he is anymore. I think he's former. And Susan Rice, who I believe is picked to be in a Joe Biden administration, she was President Barack Obama's foreign affairs advisor. I think I read an article where she's going to be in a Joe Biden administration. She worked under Strobe Talbot at the Brookings Institute, who believes in world government. Susan Rice has now been tapped. She was tapped to be President Obama's, to be our ambassador to the United Nations at one point. So what are we talking about here today, everybody? The New World Order is world government. We're watching world government, globalization, the world trade, World Bank, World Criminal Court. We're watching the one world government forming right now. It was prophesied about in the Bible, and you're watching it come to pass as we speak. Without Bible prophecy, we would have no way of knowing what's coming next. Now, I do want to say again that over the years, over 50 plus years, Irvin Baxter studied Bible prophecy. And as we started he wrote his first book. We started Endtime magazine. We went on the radio in 98. We went on the television in 2010. All of these things spreading around the world, the Jerusalem Prophecy College. Irvin Baxter always taught the prophecies. We never went off of that. Even though, like early on, we thought there was a potential. Maybe Gorbachev might be the Antichrist. And then we went to Vladimir Putin, and we watched different people. And then there were different presidents of the United States. Hey, will President George Bush get a peace agreement signed in the Middle East? Will a President Obama? Will a President Trump? Will a President, I'd say potentially a President Biden? We don't know what's going to happen yet. But regardless, no matter who the players were, all during this time, the prophecy still kept clicking off, okay? And so now we've kind of been rocked. We said, well, hold on a minute. We thought President Trump was doing so many things that were right in the line with Bible prophecy. Now it looks like there's a potential for maybe a Joe Biden to get in. What's going to happen now? I can tell you what's going to happen. Just like they always have. There's been hundreds of prophecies fulfilled, Bible prophecies. The next ones are going to click right off, just like they always have. All throughout the ministry of my father-in-law, Irvin Baxter, he kept, no matter who the players were, we kept sticking with the prophecies, and they always come to pass. Guess what? They always will come to pass. God knows the end from the beginning. God has already seen all this stuff played out. And He went back and told Daniel and Ezekiel and Zechariah and John that, hey, you guys, here's what's going to happen. Daniel, you write this, and then your chapter 7 is going to correlate with John, your Revelation 13. You guys will not be contemporaries. You're going to live 650 years separated, but your books are going to, in many ways, they're going to align right up with the symbols and all these different things. Why am I showing you guys this? Because it's for many reasons, but it's letting us know where we're at on the timeline. We're in the end time, and it's also building our faith in the Word of God. Jesus said, I tell you these things before they come to pass, that when they do come to pass, you might believe. So, do I have faith in the Word of God? Absolutely. These prophecies will come to pass, just like the Bible says they will, regardless of who is in the office of the presidency of the United States, who's running Europe, who's running Russia, who's running Israel. These prophecies will come to pass just exactly like they always have, one right after another. God bless.
This has been End of the Age, brought to you by the faithful partners of Endtime Ministries. If you're not currently a partner with Endtime Ministries, or if you would like more information, we invite you to call us at 1-800-ENDTIME. That's 1-800-363-8463, or visit us online at endtime.com.
Thank you for watching. If you liked this video, subscribe to our YouTube channel and like our Facebook page.